How do you feel about the format of the next two nights' debates?
Well, there's obviously a lot of candidates that will be on stage, so it's important, I think, first and foremost, that candidates don't make a mistake. We've seen careers end in a 50-second gaffe, so you want to be sure and not make any mistakes. But I think it's important for those who aren't as well known in this race to use this as an opportunity, particularly in the early states, to try to capture some attention, but do so in a way that doesn't injure their campaign. It could be significant injury. You want to make sure that you do things in a way that will benefit the campaign, but not make any mistakes.
Definitely. And with so many people on the stage tonight, how do you think, tonight and tomorrow, how do you think that candidates are going to try to set themselves apart?
Well, I think candidates will try to stick to their message. I think some candidates are sort of coming from the hard left. Other candidates, like Ohio's Tim Ryan, is sort of staking out the middle ground. I think has been very effective at talking about how we need to become a party, a blue-collar party, and sort of no longer a party dominated by both coasts. So I think that's really an important message. I think Vice President Joe Biden certainly will stay above the fray and not get into it with his fellow Democrats, but take on the president.
Okay. And do you think that others will follow suit and really kind of just go after the president, or do you think we're going to see some Democratic principles going head to head tonight?
I think it's likely that you may see some of that in both of these debates where Democrats take on each other. I think certainly there'll be a lot of criticism for the president, but at the same time, I think Democratic voters across the country and in these early states, polling suggests they want somebody that can win the election, and that means a candidate that can win in those Midwestern states like Ohio, like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin. So I think Democrats can spar among themselves and among the issues that we debate about. However, I think Democrats are going to be looking for the most electable candidate who can take on and win the presidency.
Certainly, and we definitely have plenty of candidates that are coming from the Great Lakes region, Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Joe Biden's super strong in Pennsylvania, and then Tim Ryan in Ohio, Amy Klobuchar. Those are kind of names that, besides Tim Ryan, we know him here. What do you expect to see from him potentially on a national stage tonight?
I think Congressman Ryan has really done really well in recent weeks. He's had a really good outing in South Carolina. I think he's got a strong economic message, particularly in the Rust Belt. He's got a background of serving people from places like Youngstown, in cities and communities that have really been decimated by the deindustrialization of our country. And so he's got a great message, I think, to talk about that. I think Joe Biden certainly can resonate and connect with voters in places like Ohio and his home state of Pennsylvania. So I think the challenge for them in a lot of ways is to maintain that center ground, that center of gravity, not get pulled too far to the left, and demonstrate that they have appeal and can be successful in the general election. Of course, Joe Biden is the clear front runner right now. And all the polls show that. He and Sanders and Warren are probably the most well-known. I think Sanders has lost some ground recently. Warren has gained ground. So there's certainly those two going to be some competition, although they're not on the debate stage the same night. But certainly those two are fighting among that progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
And so we have all NBC and MSNBC moderators tonight. What do you hope to see from the moderators?
Well, the moderators, I think, are a very experienced group, a diverse group. So I think, I'm pretty confident that they'll do a good job, positioning the issues. I think, given that there's so many people on stage, that has to be certainly a challenge for them. But I have confidence that they'll be fair and do right by the candidates. I think it's just important to, not make any mistakes. Especially if you're in the front, and if you're Biden and Sanders and Warren, continue to get out your message. I think if you're someone like Tim Ryan or some of the lesser-known candidates, there's opportunity for you to stake out your claim and get more recognition among donors and national viewers. But also keep in mind, this is a three-state at this point: Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. Those are the early states. So you want to be able to connect with voters in states like that as well and not lose them during this process.
Definitely. We talked about the front-runner, Biden, Sanders, Warren, of course. But who do you think is a underdog candidate that's really going to stand out tonight, or really needs to at this point?
Well, frankly, I think Tim Ryan could be somebody that stands out in this format. I'm confident that he has the ability to do that. I think people like Cory Booker probably need to at this point. We've seen his candidacy sort of start to go the other direction, as well as Beto O'Rourke. He certainly lost a lot of ground, and I think has to really go out there and demonstrate he has some talent and ability to continue to be competitive in the primary and in the general. He's somebody that came in pretty high and has sort of dipped down a little bit in the polls.
Another guy who's been in the news over the weekend was Pete Buttigieg. He really
Yes.
took a beating. Do you think he's going to be able to address that tonight, or do you think he'll kind of just stick to the presidential platform?
It's a good question. I mean, I think if he's wise, he'll stick to his message. You know, he's still competing. You know, I think he was around 7% in the polls or somewhere, but certainly he's had a rough couple weeks. You know, not to say the least, and so that issue is probably looming pretty large in this debate and in this race and in the future for this campaign.
So we have some really experienced people, especially with the media and the debates, on the stage tonight, and then some lesser knowns. Do you think that they've been training and maybe know to like talk in kind of like those soundbite kind of things that's going to get them on, you know, NBC, MSNBC the next day, and you know, the morning shows is probably really where they want to see their faces tomorrow.
These are people that are used to really getting up on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate and giving long speeches and sort of being the center of attention. And so I think they really ought to be practicing, and I'm sure they have been, to really hone their message as tightly as they can to 30 seconds. That's the format, you know, 60 seconds, 30 seconds. So they need to be prepared to do that and be effective at it.
Now, across the board, do you think we're going to see civility tonight, or do you think they're going to go at each other?
You hope there's civility. I think it's always possible for some of the candidates who are sort of in the basement to maybe take some liberty and try to get recognized. But I think by and large, the message that they should be conveying is that we're unified as a party to try to win the presidency in 2020.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Anything else you would like to add that I haven't asked you?
No, I think, again, you know, first and foremost, not making any big mistakes for the candidates, being able to just talk about their message, get their message across in a way that I think, you know, can win the Democratic voters without alienating independent voters. But I'm looking forward to watching this. I think certainly going to be excited to see Ohio's Tim Ryan and what he has to offer tonight, and see if tonight's is an opportunity for him to sort of break out and distinguish himself.
And one more last question for you. What do you think that the candidates need to do on stage for the next couple of nights to win back Ohio, win the presidency? What do you think they need to do to get it back to being a blue state?
I think the message from the Democratic candidates has to be focused on places like Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, talking about how we're going to rebuild the middle class and strengthen communities that have been devastated by the loss of jobs. So it's got to be an economic message, a message about retirement security, about rebuilding communities, about taking on the opioid crisis. These are issues I think Ohioans are really going to be paying attention to. They're going to be more bread and butter issues around jobs and trade, messages that I think people like Joe Biden and Tim Ryan have really focused on. So those are important issues, not just in tonight's debate, but also going forward in the 2020 election.